Wes, what was the thing that encouraged you the most as you prepared this sermon?
Just really encouraged, just reading in Moses, as always, anytime I read this passage, I always feel like I'm very similar to Moses. And just as I've came to Christ and then just diving into ministry, I always just kind of like second guess things and just like, really, Lord, me? Like, I really have nothing to bring to the table. I'm the most average Joe of all the Joes out there. So like Moses' example and like examples like him, like Gideon and stuff, is just like, really, are you sure? Like, I don't know.
Right.
And so it just always really encourages me and challenges me too.
Okay. Baxter?
Yeah, thanks, Wes. Thanks for that word. I was most encouraged by what you were hitting on at the end. That's His word, His gospel, His means. And so we are to leave the results up to Him. That encouraged me.
Thanks.
Josue?
In general, I like the applications also. Just focus on ministry and how the passage as a whole applies also to ministry, personally.
Sin?
Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks.
I was encouraged, your first point when you're applying it, so the presence of Christ with us and us being mindful of that presence in ministry was a very present help for me.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, the greatest encouragement was when you went off on how God shows Him grace and patience to those who question and give excuses, because, and then, I mean, as you were saying, I feel like I can do those kind of things too, and it's just great to see how patient our God is with us. That He doesn't respond with righteous anger, but answers and promises.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Eric?
Yeah, early in the sermon, you really drew out what God says, I will be with you. And I just got this picture of like a father with his scared child, like, I'm going to be there. Like, it's going to be all good. And how he leads with that. That was really edifying to myself.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I'd say the most edifying thing for me is this idea that it's the Lord that does the work, right? Moses is just an instrument. And so it wasn't just like that was the case of Moses. Clear that you were saying, like, this is just kind of the way it works. Right? God's always the one doing the work. People are just instruments, which is encouraging to me. What do you think you whiffed on?
Probably just dealing with that passage a little bit better and really grounding that aim into the passage a little bit more of His power and Moses' weaknesses, and just so focusing on that more.
Okay. All right. Baxter?
I guess I would say the main point didn't feel like a refrain throughout the sermon. It was something that you clearly stated, which was great at the very, very beginning, before the reading of the word, but it didn't feel like a refrain that you were coming back to, and even at the end, it didn't feel like it was all pointing to your main point. It felt like really true, great things, but I think it would be helpful as a listener to hear that main point repeated a few more times, and maybe closing more with that.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Josue?
Give the introduction and context of the passage before praying, I think, and explain the main point, but probably more engaging in introduction to connect with the audience would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Sin?
Just a clearer, I think it could improve if you had a clearer homiletical structure. So I think I missed it when you moved from your context to your first one. The one I got was the messenger and the message. So just I don't know what it was. Maybe they're wordy different words, trying to align them and making them shorter. I don't know, but I kind of missed where you were going in terms of your structure.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Nathan?
I think it would have been more helpful if you put the Christ connection before the application, because you're kind of hinting at it throughout. But also, when you gave your Christ connection at the end, you ended it and tied it to the Great Commission, which is where you put your first application. Anyway, so I think it would have flowed a lot better and kind of given the reasons for why we do those things, like through Christ. So
Yeah. That's good. Thanks.
So this morning when Sue preached, I don't know if you remember, but he almost started like whispering, like he was super quiet, and then he built throughout the sermon, and it was like he was building a house almost. I felt like you came out like hot.
Yep.
And it was like, all right, we're going for this thing.
Hey.
And we never had a chance to like
Breathe.
smell the flowers and
Yep.
take a look around, because we were just like going. So, not that you want to be like soup, but it's a good way of contrasting like how you can vary and build and just work on how fast and how intense you are throughout.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
I would say that the one thing is, it would have been much better and much more effective to weave your application into the points, especially because you've got a series of 4 or 5, depending on your kind of questions and kind of excuses. It kind of felt like, especially because one didn't build on another one, it just kind of was like, and then there's this, and there's this, and there's this. It felt like you did those, and it was like, now, for us, there's this application and that application. And it was very, I could kind of see where it was tied to the text at certain points, but sometimes it just felt like you were just talking about good stuff, not bad stuff, but it would have felt much more tied to what was going on there if it would have been right there in the points. And it would have also broken up the questions, which is, this passage is difficult in the sense that there's a lot of questions, and Moses keeps saying like, yeah, but, all the way along.
Yeah,
So,
that's good.
okay.
You know, I thought about that, but I just, yeah,
Right.
Baxter?
it's good.
Yeah, Wes, I would say just one thing would be looking around and engaging your audience. You did it towards the end with the application, but prior to then, I don't think you even turned your face in my direction. So it seemed like you were very focused on connecting with your manuscript, as opposed to using the manuscript ultimately to connect with the people. Maybe that's including a little bit less so you have time to look up
Yeah.
and look around. But it happened at the application, but it felt pretty like isolated as you were walking through the text as far as connecting with us visually.
Yeah. Thanks.
Josue?
In that same sense, connecting illustrations will be like more contemporary illustrations to connect with the audience or help us to understand the concepts will be really helpful.
Yeah. Thanks.
Oh, just don't mind. Another one. Oh yeah, so back to the argument ways. So God demonstrates his power by using weak instruments. Is that? I felt you argued towards God's promises in your actual sermon. So you said this is where we're going, but you went for the promise, the I will promises, and I was wondering, I think they work together. It could help you if you just clarified that into one sentence.
Yeah.
So as not to confuse what you're arguing for, what you're not.
Okay. Nathan?
That's good. Thanks.
So, just again with the Christ connection, I mean, it's there. Jesus says that I am, before Abraham was I am. But, I mean, in John there's a lot of them. So, maybe there was another one that was better. I just didn't see the whole point coming through with this gospel connection, but it was definitely there, so it's not. Just thought there might have been a more helpful one. I don't know any off the top of my head though, so sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at various times I felt like your transition from them then to us today was pretty just like abrupt. You know, it was like, but us Christians, you just like went for it, and I feel like you can more artfully bridge the ancient with today with different vocabulary and yeah, just work on like trying to get from them then to us today with your applications in a more sort of natural way.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, so mine kind of stems off of Nathan's. This is going to be for everybody, but it is definitely a step too far to say that Jesus is commissioning Moses. So, there are all kinds of debates about theophanies, just essentially the appearance of God, particularly the appearance of the second person of the Trinity in the Old Testament. There's all kinds of debates about that. But Jesus is the name of the second person of the Trinity who comes in human flesh. So Jesus for sure did not commission Moses. Now it seems like a small point, but you definitely don't want to confuse your people and think that Jesus is in the burning bush. Because the incarnation is a very, very important moment in which God comes in human flesh. So, he is claiming divinity, for sure, in John. And it's important, but you do need to be real careful. This is true with everybody. Who's wrestling with Jacob and all this kind of stuff. It ain't Jesus. Okay? So, just, that's what I'd say. What do you think you did well?
Well, I think I tried to take some of the advice you guys gave last time of not making it like a commentary and trying to cover every little aspect of it. So, I think I did that better, and I think I went a little bit slower. I probably could go even more slower. But
okay, good. Baxter?
Wes, I really appreciated up front. You did a couple things that seemed like things you had seen in your study that you're like, hey, I'm going to give this to you all so that you can use it as we're going through it. So you talked about these patterns. You said there's this question or this excuse, and then it's followed by a promise. And so then we're looking for it as we're going through the text that makes us like zero in on where are we seeing this in the text. And then you did it again in a different way when you just talked about names and meaning and how that's a pattern, and then you supported it just through the text with a couple examples in Exodus, which I thought was like just a quick thing, but a really like great, clear way to do it and to show us how to follow your train of thought. So
good.
Those are helpful.
yeah, thanks.
You were consistent on your main point throughout the development of the sermon when you talk about the character of God. So you were, putting on high his name, so you were always, highlighting who God is. So that was good.
Okay.
I love the way you ended, man. So quite pastoral and exhortative. So let us depend on God. But as we do, remember it's for His glory. So that was really good, man.
Okay.
In the beginning, when you said your main point, God demonstrates His power using weak instruments, you also followed it up with it, which we will see through Moses' weaknesses, our own weaknesses. So it's like He kind of got us connected pretty quick, like, hey, this is going to matter to you. So it got my ears perked up from the beginning. So
Thanks.
Yeah, Wes, good job preaching to the context we've been assigned, because I felt very much like this was not just for Christians, but for ministry leaders. I thought you did that well.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So it was a small thing, but it gets to kind of what you were talking about. You made a good joke about your own name, because it was brief. The reason I want to point it out is both because it was a good joke and kind of brought some levity to the situation, but second of all, it's because that 15 seconds was the most natural you spoke up there
Mm-hmm.
by a mile.
Hmm.
It was funny because you were kind of, I'm with Eric, you had this sustained high kind of, it was at the up, it sounds like it's the upper register of your voice, both in like pitch and in volume, and you just like ran that whole way. And this one you dropped down, you kind of paused really well, and then as soon as you were done, it was boom, right back to the right? So it was a good joke, but it was also like an instructive moment to be like, oh, okay. So it seems like you're slipping into something and then out of something. Now, if you can figure out how to slip into what you were doing, not just like tell jokes the whole time, but that kind of way of speaking,
Comedy routine.
and then get to where you were when it's like a important thing, that's going to be like where you're cruising for sure.
That's good.
Baxter.
I appreciated and I thought you did this really well, the time you gave to each point, the time you gave to application, the time you gave to gospel connection. Is very balanced, kind of as you worked through your sermon. I didn't feel like we were bogged down by one specific part for too long, which is obviously challenging with a long text like the one you had. So, yeah, I thought it was a great balance to the sermon.
Yeah, thanks.
That's right.
Yeah, I like the illustration. I was saying you didn't have enough illustrations, but the illustration that you used was good on the meaning of the name of the Lord.
Yeah.
And you used Gershon and Moses. Oh, and now the Lord is doing this. So it was helpful to understand the importance of He appointing His own name.
Thanks.
I thought it was helpful the way you applied Matthew 28 in terms of our desire to reach the lost. I saw a pastor for pastors, but in the area of evangelism and the commission of God. So you're keeping it in line with the text. That was a strong application point for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And there are a lot of pieces in that just to build off it that corresponded with the Exodus text. So that was good.
Thanks, Eric.
It's my turn.
Gotta jump in. You know?
Yeah. So their number 3 application. You said don't focus on results. Find signs. I just saw it was helpful that you're like, hey, this is what you're doing. No, find signs and praise God for them. So you're kind of like speaking directly to the people with that one, like showing them where they'll probably go wrong, and then leading them in the right way with it.
Yeah, thanks.
I just wrote shorthand. Like you had this run where you kept asking, "Do you believe?" I didn't write down all the questions, but rhetorically, that was really strong. Again, especially in the context of ministry leaders, you're confronting them with faith. Like, do you believe? Do you trust God? So well done.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I would say it's always hard to come up with applications in a passage like this because it's just like there's so much stuff to do. And so I think that while we critiqued you earlier for stacking them all at the end, the applications that you did have were like, oh yeah, okay, so that's like not only like relevant to your audience, but it also kind of comes from what's going on here in a way that is both encouraging but also very exhortative. So there you go.
Yeah,
There you go,
thanks.
Black.
Thanks.